Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We have a real treat for you today. So, everybody and their brother has been talking about AI. Today, we actually have two brothers that have joined forces to give you a little flavor behind the scenes. You have two agency owners. And when we talk about a monumental shift, we mean it because GenAI is coming directly for agency owners. Um, but you have two choices. You can either adapt and thrive or you can disappear. So I mentioned a monumental shift. AI is not just coming, okay? It's here. It's in our inboxes, our workflows, our headlines, our pitch decks, probably our sleep cycles too. So if you're wearing an Aura ring, you're probably tracking AI getting into your mindset. Now, that being said, every brand, every marketer, every growth team, we're feeling the same thing. It's a flood of tools, a flood of emails in your inbox. It's a lot of noise, pressure to keep up, new knowledge sets. But the real question comes down to, in a world where AI could generate almost anything, how do you create something people actually feel down to their core? How do they feel in their heart, their emotions, their minds? So today, we're not just talking about AI to grab attention or how to save time in your workflow or how to increase productivity. What we're really talking about is how do we nail the vibe? Because as we know, when things go viral, lots of views, lots of connections, the vibe is everything. If you've heard about somebody having the aura or the riz, it comes down to the vibe they're giving off. And that's ultimately what we're trying to create as marketers. How do you create moments that feel so personal, so aligned, so emotionally resonant that people don't just remember your brand, they evangelize it. They stand in your corner, they stand for you. So, in this new landscape, the brands that win aren't just the ones that are the loudest or that produce the most or that flood the market. They're the ones who make people feel something and feel seen. And AI, when used right, that could be our secret weapon to do just that. So I mentioned having a treat. So I'd like to introduce Peter Sena, my brother. Learned a ton from him. He is what I would consider an AI futurist. He's been ahead of the game for years. And now he's building a series of fantastic products that really, truly add value. I mentioned time saving. I mentioned rethinking marketing. There's nobody better to be able to get you on the forefront of this than Pete. So, Pete, without further ado, take us away, bud.
Awesome. Sounds great. Well, thank you so much, Brian, for having me. It's funny to have you introducing me, just given the fact that I've known you my entire life. Well, I guess when I was two, right? But maybe not my entire life. But for those of you that are here live on the webinar, I know this will be recorded and shared with many folks, but I want to hear from you. I want to make sure that we can really make this valuable for you. So I do have over here on this screen, if you see me looking off screen, I've got the webinar chat and the Q&A open. So if you've got questions throughout the presentation, I really want this to be valuable for you. Again, this is not a pre-recorded thing. You're here, you're giving us your time and attention. I want to make sure that you walk away with value. Just a quick kind of like TLDR on me and why you might want to listen to me. So I've been working with brands and businesses for over 20 years. My first company was an ad agency. We worked with challenger brands, mid-market brands, and I've even worked with a number of Fortune 50 companies as well, Fortune 500, Fortune 1000. So no matter what shape, no matter what size your business is, and those of you that did subscribe in advance, I did a little bit of sleuthing on you, or should I say I had my AI agents do some sleuthing on you. So we're going to get into it today. Please do use the webinar chat, put your Q&A in here. I want to make sure that I can answer any specific questions and give you guys specific demos. This is not going to be death by PowerPoint for the next 45 minutes. So with that, let me just start by kind of kicking off what Brian said. And Brian, we got good AV here. Everybody can hear me just fine?
I think you sound fantastic, personally.
Okay, wonderful. I got this overpriced microphone here, so I'll thank my team for that one. So let me just kick it right off here. So what's changed, right? So the first thing I want to do, I know we've got a lot of seasoned marketers on the call today on the webinar. I know we've got a few folks who are just getting into marketing, and the good news is that we're going to speak to both audiences now. So I want to first start with the old world, and that's the world. It's funny I say old world, but I'm talking like a few years ago because ChatGPT's been around for a couple of years now. And it really kicked off this big boom around generative artificial intelligence, or Gen AI, as people call it. And when you think about being a marketer or an agency or a brand manager or whatever role or side of the table you're sitting on, the side on the left here, insights and planning, coming up with concepts, building the assets, then getting those assets distributed in a campaign format, whether it's one to one or one to many, and then obviously you're measuring and optimizing what you're doing. That's the typical flow that I'd say 90% of businesses or more, whether you're B2B or B2C or B2B2C or whatever business model you have, direct to consumer, et cetera, we're all going through that same kind of loop. And I think what's really interesting is before generative AI, everything took so much longer, and longer meant more expensive. More teams, more people. We think about insights, right? To get insights, we'd have to do surveys, qualitative, quantitative, panel group surveys, right? These things were expensive, they were time consuming, and sometimes we didn't get all that much value out of it. Sometimes we got gold out of it and it was worth its weight. So from there, we're then going in, whether we do it in house ourselves as a brand, or you go and you outsource it to an agency partner or some freelancers or contractors. Obviously, how you get things done is going to differ depending on the attendees here. But when you go from there, it's all about coming up with the ideas, making those ideas, building the ideas. So now we've got costly photo, video, design, development, all these different costs that you're incurring as a brand, as a business to create these marketing materials, to create these sales decks, these sales materials. And then from there, you're distributing it, right? You're putting it out there. Maybe you're doing paid media or earned media or whatever it is that you're focused on, right? And then after that, you're hoping, if you're lucky, you've got some multivariate or some A/B split testing and you're being able to do that. Now, what I've described here on the left in the red box, and I made it red on purpose because that's the old world, is it takes forever to get this stuff done, right? What I'm going to talk to you folks about today is a couple simple tricks on how you can use AI to really change the way you do this stuff. And what that basically means is you're going to cut down your time to execution, AKA your time to learning, but also it's going to help you save time and money in a lot of ways moving forward. So after the generative AI world, now we've got always on agents, right? You can sign up for a $20 a month subscription to something like ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude. And these are the big large language models. Many of the tools that many of you use, if you're using tools like HubSpot or Microsoft, Office 365, you have a lot of these generative AI things built into the tools you already use. So don't be focused on all the things you have to do differently. What I would encourage you to do, if nothing else out of today, is think about how did I do things today and yesterday, and how, based on this conversation and this webinar that you're sitting on today, can you do things differently tomorrow? So in the new world, right? Insights happen at the speed of light, at the speed of internet, right? You've got an always on listening agent that's looking for a good review or a bad review from a customer, that's looking and scanning your inbox or your CRM. ChatGPT just connected to HubSpot. I know a lot of folks that are on the webinar today, work with Brian, his great company EverWonder on CRM types of things with HubSpot or RevOps, right? These things are now possible right inside of the platforms you already pay for. It's really amazing, which means that now you can prompt storm or quickly brainstorm ideas working with these AI agents. And what I love about these AI agents, friends, is that they work 24/7, 365, right? They don't call out, they don't need mental health days, right? They don't like skip their deliverables for you, and they don't give you 1 day's notice and walk off the job like some folks might do, right? And I know some of you are smiling right now hearing this, but also grimacing because this is the new reality that we have, right? It's a different type of work. This post-COVID world, this post-Gen AI world, you can lean into. So that's the new world we're going to do now really quick. Again, I've got my eyes here on the questions. We're going to make sure any open questions we do get answered here. So please use the chat. We're here to your benefit, and we want this to be interactive. We're not here to put you to sleep this morning. So on that, with this new generative AI world, we can create messages one-to-one on a personalized scale without having to scale your team. In fact, many of the clients that we're working with are actually downsizing their teams right now. They're working on increasing their business EBITDA, they're working on increasing the margins. And what that unfortunately means in a post-COVID world with the compression that they see is they have to get more done with less. So, the thing I would say to people is you can't solve yesterday's problem like with the old playbook, right? What you have to do is you have to think about a new world order. Now, fun fact, spoiler alert, the image you see here, I generated it in about 3 seconds with one of the tools that we built, which we'll demo today, called VibeGen. It lets you basically take on-brand assets, you can run them through our tool, and you can generate more on-brand assets in the click of a button, as opposed to having to spend, thousands of dollars on either SG&A costs or outsourced vendors or whatever. So it's a really powerful tool that's used by brands and agencies. It's a really fast-growing Figma plugin as well. So wherever you work, you can take these tools with you. And many of them we have kind of free tiers on. So, no hard sells today. So after about 20 years of building brands, when this generative AI stuff kind of popped in the scene, I started working with my team and mining millions of insights. I started scraping, platforms like Reddit and social media platforms. I do a lot of work in B2B, but also B2C. So just being able to pull all this down, pull these learning, I clock probably over 1,000 hours of myself. That's not inclusive of all my teams across my companies. And I use these frontier models. And by frontier models, I mean OpenAI's ChatGPT and Anthropic's Claude and Google's Gemini and the many other tools that are out there. And I built a playbook. And the good news is, folks, is that I'm not going to gatekeep any of it. This entire playbook you guys can have. We actually open sourced it. I want to make sure that the things that we've picked up on, we can give to everybody. So with that, I'll just introduce the vibe framework. The term, you might have heard the term vibe recently, depending on how many Gen Z or Gen Alpha employees you might have. But really, where I'm actually taking the term vibe from was from Andre Karpathy, who's one of the kind of founding members of the GPT, right? So he working with the OpenAI, he coined a term called vibe coding, which, if you're not living under a rock, you've probably heard the term vibe coding, which is basically just references this idea of like an emotional connection where you can just talk to your computer, type to your computer, and it's going to write the code. So that term vibe coding was the thing that first popped up. It's become so popular that even former President Obama just was talking about it recently at a big summit. And I encourage you to just do a Google search for vibe coding if you haven't. What's super interesting about vibe coding is it lets anybody, because of these large language models, anyone can code now, right? So you can play with just about any tool off the shelf, from a chat GPT to whatever, and you can build things. But I wanted to push it further. I wanted to make it more beyond coding, because I think what's happening now is we're seeing a lot more emotionally resonant marketing that's starting to work a lot more, and the old playbook isn't working. So I took that acronym of vibe because, vibe coding, vibe marketing, vibe branding, it's everywhere right now. And I wanted to plug into the zeitgeist of that moment, but still taking the timeless and true principles that I've picked up over the last 20 years of working with some of the best brands in the world. And I'll take you through what that vibe framework's all about. So the thing to note, and the best marketers that are in the room today know this already, demographics are dead. They've been dead for a long time. It's sort of an old stodgy way to look at it. But yeah, it's still being taught at the Babsons, at the Harvards, at the Yales of the world. They're still teaching old marketing in a lot of ways. And I know this because I lecture at a lot of these schools and I see their syllabi. And I think what we have to really understand now is, if you want to plug into that cultural zeitgeist, if you want to not fade into obscurity, you have to understand that these new world orders are happening, right? So I'm going to pull back the curtain. I'm going to pop the balloon here. Another asset created with VibeGen. Again, this type of an asset would have taken one of my art directors or 3D designers probably a day to create in the old world, right? This was created in seconds in today's world because of generative AI. So I want to just kind of pull back the curtain for a second. We're living in this world that I call the feeling economy, right? It's less about logic, and the best marketers would say we've always lived in that world. But what is it that the Liquid Deaths and the Apples and the Nikes have that, quite frankly, many of the brands that are here on this webinar today don't have? It's the ability to sort of feel first and rationalize later. And the best marketers know this, right? They know this off the top of their head because they've been living in this world. And the numbers don't lie, right? Think about it yourself, right? You probably, on your way into work this morning or whatever, you probably didn't think that you were going to pay $5,000 more for a commodity product, right? But yet you might be drinking this special Whole Foods spring water from Mountain Valley. You might be drinking, a cup of Starbucks, one of the brands that you put on your body today. And the good example I'll give you here is the commodity price of water and coffee you can see on the slide, but the emotion premium that comes with it, right? To drink Liquid Death, which looks like you're drinking out of a beer can, or to drink Starbucks, we all know the markup is absolutely absurd, right? Because you're buying the brand. Now, in a world where everyone's generating content at the speed of a click, how do you make sure that you're still emotionally resonant? Well, what you do is you plug into this vibe framework, right? Whether you're a brand with all the resources or a brand with some resources or even none, this is a framework that you can take forward, right? So the vibe framework is all about four key components here. It's about velocity. And by velocity, I don't just mean speed. I mean speed with direction focused on outcomes, right? If you're going fast, it doesn't matter if you're going in the wrong direction, right? If you're going slow, it doesn't matter as long as you're getting the right results, right? So velocity is about speed and tension and getting those outcomes that you need. We're going to talk about that today. The identity aspect. How do you create a one-to-one customer connection so that you're not selling features and benefits, you're selling transformations, you're selling better lives for your customers. That's going to lead to higher customer lifetime value. That's going to lead to shortened sales cycles. That's going to lead to increased growth in ways that you've never seen. Boundaryless, right? We can't only think in the channels, the tactics, the ways that we play, right? Stop thinking the old way of, My SDRs do email outreach. I then prospect, I then get a demo, I then move them through this particular funnel. There are so many different ways to convert, and I'll give you guys some examples of that today. And then last but not least is emotion. I feel like in a lot of cases, I know a lot of you are B2B marketers, we've forgotten about emotion a little bit, right? We're so focused on ROI, we're so far focused on being able to hit those quarterly annual metrics that we need. We forget about the single greatest thing that actually drives those purchases, and that's human emotion. So what the Vibe framework does is it's going to give you specific tools and tactics that you can use. But what makes this better than just, last year's marketing framework is it's entirely enabled with AI. Meaning you can use prompts with AI, you can use these platforms to do a lot of this stuff for you and with you and to accelerate any of your employees, right? You can turn your 1x employees into 10x employees. You can turn your 10x employees into 100x employees. That's what's possible. We are going to see over the next 3 to 5 years more 10-person or less billion-dollar market cap companies because of what these generative AI tools can do for you. And if you don't believe me, send me a note. I'm happy to send you tons of data that will reliably make you see that what I'm telling you is not false. So velocity, I'll start with that, right? Old world, it's really slow. New world, it's really fast, right? Old world, you're waiting for your agencies to come back with, all their pros and pomp and circumstance, right? New world, you push a button, you've got a bunch of ideas. One person or two people on your team are going through curating those ideas, shaping them to make sure that they fit the brand, and then getting them out and testing, right? Velocity, speed with direction, focused on outcome. So I'll give you an example of it, right? I love this particular thing. Had Maybelline back in 2023 launched this particular campaign with the old world playbook, they would have spent over $1 million in physical build out costs, right? Logistics, event, etc. Let me just hit play again here 1 second, folks. But instead, what they did was they responded to the zeitgeist of social media. Now, you might be saying, okay, Pete, that's great. I'm a B2B brand. I can't do this. Stick with me, folks. We've got some B2B examples here as well. I just really love this one. And I love it the most because the entire thing did not exist. This is entirely created with CGI and 3D, right? So for $30,000 in production costs versus $1 million, they were able to garner over 12 million TikTok views, the cart value of Maybelline from an e-com experience and the brand earned media value of it was absolutely transformational. And it created this sort of mind loop and curiosity loop in people's minds, really wondering, is it real? You might have recently seen a couple weeks ago the kangaroo thing, or the thing with the older man with the flag around his thing for the finals in sports. So again, these things are happening on a regular basis, right? That's velocity in action. Is you see something that's happening, you see a question or a curiosity that might be trending about your brand. Maybe it's a question about your payroll software or your fintech platform. How do you lean into that and turn these zealots or these pagans into evangelists for your brand? I'm not going to go through Playbook for all of them because I don't have so much time with you folks here today. But what I will show you is if you get the free Playbook that we'll offer for you folks, we'll give you step-by-step things on how to do this. So if I wanted to go and do this in the case of Maybelline, what we would do here is we would subscribe to some real-time trends. We'd have a dashboard that's feeding those trends. We'd be automatically importing certain keywords or phrases. That trend brief would be going to whoever on your team or at your agency is doing these things. And then you're going to do rapid decisions every single day. And those rapid decisions are going to allow you to pick a trend, lean into it, run a test, give a limited time block. In this case, we suggest a 2-hour time slot. And then you deliver a trend capture and how you can capitalize on it. We'll talk about how you can do that in the whole playbook, but this is just an example. For each of these things that I'm going through today, we're going to actually have step-by-step ways on how you can do it yourself, because I'm a big believer of teaching people how to fish as opposed to fishing for them. So identity is a big part of the Vibe framework, right? We have to design for our aspirational selves. And, the thing that I think is really important to think about is like emotion transcends demographic in a lot of ways, right? Whether you're catering to, a 25-year-old SDR that works at a FANG company or a 55-year-old that is transitioning into the next phase of their life, they both might have a need for retirement planning or whatever the product is that you're offering. They both might have that interest. So that's where demographics would absolutely fail you, because both of those folks could be a buyer of your SaaS platform. They could be a buyer of your business, whatever it is, if you focus on the aspiration, right? What's the transformation that both of them want, right? How do you save them time? How do you give them entertainment or value or utility in their life? That's what identity is all about. This example is actually a Duolingo example, kind of a fun thing playing into, distrust culture and that sort of thing, which I won't bore you with here today. But you're saying, okay, Pete, how do I do it for B2B? I love this campaign from ClickUp. If you're not familiar, ClickUp is a project management software. It does a number of different things. And when they were launching their new chat feature, which was a direct competitor to Slack, which is now owned by Salesforce, many of us are using Slack or Microsoft Teams. They did this fun kind of viral protest moment, right? Where they staged a fake protest outside Salesforce's Dreamforce conference, and they had paid actors that were basically doing the cut the Slack picket signs. And the core insight behind this was that ultimately Slack is where communication happens, but we all know it's not where work happens in a lot of ways, right? So people are going back and forth. It's so easy to get lost in that Slack thread. So what ClickUp launched was a product called ClickUp Chat, which works just like Slack, but every piece of correspondence is tied back to the task people are working on. So it saves a lot of time. People are working where they're actually doing the work, which is really helpful. 100 million social media impressions on the video, people posting on LinkedIn across the board, number of different new trial subscriptions, and also some picking up some new enterprise customers as a result of it. So these are the ways that you can plug into that zeitgeist. These types of things are much harder to do unless you have a real-time rapid response. AI makes it super easy because when they're about to launch this product, what they basically did is they looked into all the things that people were complaining about with Slack, scanned Reddit, scanned social media, and all that rich data, those rich insights. They didn't have to spend $100,000 on a focus group, right? They were able to just get those at the speed of light by just prompting their AI product. Nowadays, with products like ChatGPT, they have built-in web search. So if you prompt it correctly, it'll go out and actually scan the internet for you. It's not just outdated information like it used to be a couple of years ago in AI.
So Pete,
Boundaryless,
we're
right?
about hold on one sec. We're about 20 minutes in, and
Hmm.
there's a lot of rich information here. I think one insight that we can pull out with the Vibe framework is there is fundamentals to marketing that we can't lose to build evangelists. On this time check, though, do you want to continue to go through at this depth? Do you want to get to some of the tech stack? How do you want to run this?
Yeah, no, that's great point, Brian. And how much time do we have back total?
Um, we typically run these for about 40 minutes with Q&A. I think if we run 45, 50 minutes, I think that's okay.
Cool. So we've got about 20 left, if I heard you.
Yeah.
Great. No, that's great. So I will speed it up a little bit, folks. And again, do have our eyes on the chat for anybody that is going to be, tuning into that chat. Would love to answer any of your direct questions. So I won't go into that in too much detail. We'll just kind of close this point here by saying boundaryless in action, right? We talked a lot about B2B. Notion, for those of you that might use it, it's primarily a B2B platform now, right? They've got a great enterprise tier. And this is a great example of a SaaS platform, literally doing a pop-up coffee shop, right? They launched Cafe Notion, which was a mobile coffee cart in New York City, Berlin, London, Paris, San Francisco. And really the strategy is pretty simple here, right? It's like, how do you get people to engage with you in a moment of delight? And in this case, it was really the way that they inspired this entire campaign was largely driven by the things that they saw in their user groups, in their threads, in the scanning of the internet. These things can happen a lot faster now. And that's the sort of point is like when you think about your brand, don't just think about the traditional channels. Think about your customers, where they live, and what are some new ways to reach them. The old world, much harder to do that because you don't have teams that are always focused on that. The new world is you're asking ChatGPT to come up with some new channels and tactics for your brand, and there you go. So again, this I'll finish off on the E in Vibe, which is really all about emotion. I'll give you a couple of examples of how you can plug into emotion. You would never think a company like Data Rails, right? A financial planning analysis platform. In a lot of ways, they do a lot more than just those two things. But in a lot of ways, it's like why would they launch this plush Excel obsessed panda on social media? You might be thinking that's a very consumer centric thing, and you're right. Because B2B is business to business, but humans are the people that power those businesses, for now at least. But the emotional strategy here is like, how do you plug into these different things? You listen to social media, and in their case, they really understood people complaining about the 1,000 different pain points that they were having with their old school Excel solution. And that's one of the reasons why Data Rails is a multi-billion dollar, valued company. So again, emotion and action is all about thinking things differently and using the opportunity to inject a different emotion, right? Warmth and humor is not something you typically think with financial analysts, right? But they were able to do it in a way that created and subverted the typical way people were thinking about data platforms and financial planning platforms. This one I don't really have time to play, but
Are
I'll
you
mute it really quick. Loom, right? A product that many of you have probably used to record videos or async communication. Back in 2022, one of my favorite campaigns ever is they launched a canceled meetings candle, and they put this up for sale on an e-com shop. And the amount of trials that they got for their product, the amount of new customers they picked up, and the amount of goodwill they picked up on, just because they played off this really thing that people were talking about a lot on the internet, which was how much meetings suck. And we all know how much meetings suck is probably why you're sitting on this webinar right now instead of going to your one-on-one or something. So really, this is an opportunity. You would not think a B2B software as a service platform that makes videos would launch, this kind of cheesy, fun infomercial canceled meetings candle, right? But these are the types of things. They're not stunty. They're subverting the typical way people think about things. And again, what does that have to do with vibe marketing? Everything. Because now you can push a button, you can run a prompt every day, every week, whenever you want, and have content and ideas like this getting generated for you on your behalf without having to spend $100,000 on your agency or your 7-person marketing team. So again, I'll just kind of close it up, and then I'm gonna do some real-time demos for you folks here with some of the actual tools as promised and advertised. Is I want you folks to think about plugging into the 80-20 rule of emotional impact, right? 80% of that emotional connection comes from 20% of your touch points, right? The weird candle thing, the Slack protest that ClickUp did, right? The things that I mentioned. What are those first impressions that people can have with you that create those wow moments? What are those moments of achievement or points of friction or frustration that people have? How do you listen for them? You use AI. So this is a quick example. 2 years ago, pre-generative AI, this would have been a 3-month, $150,000 engagement. This is one of our clients. They're a publicly traded pet food company, to keep it simple. And normally you'd analyze survey data, you'd run qualitative panels and focus groups, right? Now, at the click of a button, we have a real-time listening platform. This entire app got spun up automatically, and it's mapping and remapping and updating the customer journey, right? Every step in this journey, you'll notice here if you're seeing in the video kind of looping, for those that are watching, you can see it's not only is it mapping the customer journey real time, but it's also showing suggested content for all those things, right? So normally you'd think this would be a 10, 15 person team having to do all this. We're able to do it now because of AI, with a much smaller team and a much smaller cost footprint, right? So we can essentially go down from 2 years, or like literally down to a couple weeks now. So cut costs, increase speed to market, and most importantly, get the results that you need to get your next promotion, get the results you need to keep your job without the pain and the price that usually comes with it. So on that, like a couple of very specific things you can do. Again, we'll include all these things in the follow-up for those that want it. This is a simple emotion wheel that I took and created. It's a free Google sheet you guys can grab. It takes the emotion wheel. So think about all the emotions that you want your customers to feel. And then what I did here for you folks is I added the emotion, the definition of the emotion, common emojis for it. And you can just paste this into ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or Copilot, whatever you use. And you can just say, hey, I'm looking to make my customer feel this way. What are some ways that you would suggest doing that? And these are some of the really simple prompts that you can put in, and we'll go from there. So again, 5-day vibe sprint, right? This is something really quick. This is not a big, massive change management initiative, right? Grab a small team. It could even be your summer interns if you have to, right? And run this very simple playbook. It's open source. You can have it for free. Again, you don't have to buy any of it, right? We run this 5-day sprint, very much inspired by the Google Ventures of the world, who had their design sprint about 5 years ago. Love these types of ways of thinking, right? Spend a day understanding and mapping your customer, understanding and mapping your prospects. Definitely recommend working cross-functionally, right? Getting your sales team with your product team, your marketing team. Spend a day, or even if you don't have a day, spend a half a day, right? But it doesn't have to be this multi-quarter initiative, right? One day, understanding mapping. The playbook will let you guys download, gives you step-by-step things, gives you an agenda, what to do hour by hour in the day. We run these things all the time, so if you need help with it, definitely let us know. We're happy to give you some advice. The second day is like sketching and ideating, right? Working with these AI tools to generate these ideas, and we're going to show you that in just a moment. Deciding and making some decisions on the third day, running some tests and experiments, and then testing and learning. And those you might be saying, well, we've got some legal teams that have to approve things, that sort of thing. These frameworks we suggest consider these types of challenges that you'll run into. So they're all possible and can be done within the right framework. So again, you'll all get this just to kind of come back around. Taste is your ultimate advantage in the intelligence era. Let me start by showing you what's possible. So in
Pete, before we demo
preparing,
those tools, I just want to say one thing.
yeah,
In
of
the
course.
Vibe framework, Boundaryless is really relevant because we've done 8 webinars up to this point. And for
Hmm.
those that are returning, folks on my team, et cetera, there are best practices that approach websites, but also top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel marketing. The one advice I want to give to everybody is boundaryless doesn't mean you have to copy what is best practice. It means when you think about the experience that you want your customers to have, that allows you to understand their emotions deeper. And so think about if you're selling a classic e-commerce solution where you want someone to see a shirt as an example, go on a Shopify site and purchase that shirt. That experience we already know is kind of stamp and repeat. A lot of people are doing it really well. So yeah, copy that experience, but use AI agents, use generative AI to tap into the emotion that you want, because the insights that you pull from your product, that's what people are really listening to. And that's what we don't want to lose. And everything that Pete's about to demo right now, you still have to have taste, but you also have to understand, what do I want my end user to feel in the process? Because creating can happen a lot faster, but it's what I walk away with that's important.
It's a great point, Brian. Yeah, and I think, again, your taste is the one thing that's going to help keep you in your seat, right? It's the one thing that robots can't replace because robots are looking backwards, not forwards. Um, so I think the great question coming in here, which we're gonna tap into in a second. So I think the thing to really think about here is you have to have a clear understanding of the business. Of course, the vision, values, all that stuff that we know are table stakes as marketers. These things are ironclad. They're not going to change. They're the same thing from the 60s all the way till now. Technique is super important, right? If you've taken nothing else away from this webinar here, it's that by introducing AI enabled workflows into your business, you're going to be able to absolutely transform the way that you do things. And then from a tools perspective, frontier models, really making sure that you've got access to the right tools. Also, highly encourage you to make sure you're working with your compliance and legal teams to make sure what you're putting in these tools, it's not being trained on your data or your data is safe and protected. I could do a whole separate webinar on that and would be happy to if you folks want that. But really, the tools we make us. So I want to just kind of get into some demos here. One of the great questions that came in from one of the audience attendees was, do I worry that chasing trends will dilute the core brand message? The short answer is no, because I don't believe in chasing trends. What I believe is identifying and seeing when what I call trend velocity marketers are starting to go up. So what I do is try to look at, encourage people to have the systems where they can tap in early as these trends are happening, but make sure that they're connecting the trend directly back to their brand proposition, directly back to their value ladder. Because the thing is, you don't want to chase a trend because then that's just inauthentic, right? But the example that I would give here is if you see someone complaining, like I'll use the example of ClickUp. If I was on the ClickUp product team and I was about to launch ClickUp Chat, and the reason we created ClickUp Chat was because we wanted to make sure that every conversation was tied back to a work stream or tied back to an item. If that was my value prop in my product requirements document, and why I was launching it, I'm going to I'm going to villainize the people I want to steal market share from. In this case, it's Slack, right? Which is the ubiquitous platform. Slack and Microsoft Teams probably account for more than 70% of the total addressable market of real-time chat messaging platforms in terms of how people do work. So to answer that question, I wouldn't chase the trend. What I would chase is the pain point, because the pain point and the number of times people are complaining about getting lost in Slack or not being able to find something that they had in the Slack search or connect it back to the work. These are not trends. These are velocity vectors that are going up that are increasing complaints on Reddit, increasing complaints on private communities or being listed. So in that case, the way you stay timely and timeless is you get at it first, right? You're able to see the thing starting to rise up and you're connecting it back. So for that particular thing, I would have a prompt framework set up that's looking for pain points specific to my business, trained on my very specific messaging to create and surface those opportunities. And I'll show you an example of how to do that in just a moment. Another question I saw was take on using humor or characters in serious industries. You know, data rail sounds like a pretty serious industry. A good example is IBM. A couple of years ago, they did a great thing on their consulting side where they basically did mini horror films. You would never expect a company like, Big Blue IBM to do little mini horror documentaries. but that created massive lift for them because when you play to the emotions of the human, you can win in a much bigger way. So my take on using humor or characters is that I think, you know, everything can be serious, right? Like a great example is Aura Ring, which, I recently saw. Their whole campaign's around giving someone the middle finger. That might be a little too outlandish for you if you're in a fintech platform, but what's the number one pain point or problem that you solve in that business? And I'll show you how to do that. So one of the attendees, hopefully you're here today. If you are, just give me a shout in the chat or in the webinar. But the company was called Rentvine, and I went on the website and I was trying to kind of figure out, well, what does it mean to be property management software? Like, I'm clearly not your ICP. So one of the first things I did to sort of get to the bottom of it was I said, okay, well, who is the audience for Rentvine? What are we trying to communicate messaging wise to them? And then how do I actually move them? So we ran our little ACT tool, and what ACT does, I'll just show you really quick. You can see it. I'll put a link in the chat. You're welcome to try it yourselves, folks. So what this tool does here, I'm just popping it in the chat here for everybody. Oops, let me just do it to all. Brian, maybe you can post that to everyone that's attending. I think I just popped it in the chat just so
No
everybody can
problem.
see it.
You got it.
So this tool that you do is you pop in your brand name, you can generate it automatically, or you can fill it in with the information from that. So I'll just show you what that looks like filled out. So this is an example for, in the case of Rentvine, we went through and it automatically AI mapped the audience, what could be a way to communicate to them, and then some specific triggers and touch points that might help. Now, I want to be really clear. I just auto selected the ones that I thought matched most. But if I was doing this real time, I'll just do one with, one of our favorite timeless brands that we all know and love is Nike. If I just click generate, it's going to automatically generate it. I could have pasted in some information, but when I click generate act toolkit, just to show you folks how the tool works, again, it's 100% free, um, is when this comes back in just a second, it's going to give you things to choose from.
So,
And you
Pete,
could,
just while the robots are working real quick. So that's proxying how many different sources, just so the audience knows exactly how many things that you're scrubbing to get there.
yeah, so this is actually using two of the largest large language models, and we're also using a web-based proxy search. So any publicly available information on that, along with the LLM, is pulling those into this particular framework. And then you can sort of upvote or downvote. So if I was to say, I don't want fitness enthusiasts, no. I don't want fashion forward, no. But I do want elite athletes. So that's kind of interesting. I'll just upvote that one. Now I'm going to basically get this shareable copy link with these particular saved insights. So it's just one example. Going back to the Rentvine example, because I think it's a really good one. We've now got these saved insights. But if we wanted to take it one step further, I'll just show you what that might look like using our platform here called Vulcan. So I'll go in. I've already set up a project for Rentvine. This is basically ChatGPT for marketers. It's a tool that one of my companies built. And what's really powerful about it is it helps agencies, consultancies, and brands really tap in. And instead of having to think about prompting and think about agents, you just go in and tell it what you want, and it does it for you, which I think is really helpful. So in the case of Rentvine, I've got some of Rentvine's information kind of preloaded here. But if I said, okay, you know what, like I'm really looking to get a deeper understanding of some insights for my customer. So in the case of Rentvine here, I'll just click Insight Generator. Now, for those of you that use ChatGPT or Claude or any of these platforms, you know how annoying it is to get a good answer out of it, right? You got to prompt and reprompt and go back and forth. What we're doing right now, as you see it real time, we're going out, we're doing a live search of the internet. We're hitting one of our vector databases, which has millions and millions of records in our database. And what we're doing is we're combining all that together, also using the frontier models, and we're running a research analysis. And you're going to see the result of that in just a second. Now you might be saying, well, Pete, I pay for ChatGPT and there's a deep research button. I could just click it. I would say click that research button, pop in Rentvine and see what comes back. And then compare and contrast it to what you see come back. What's different about Vulcan versus other products is that Vulcan was designed and built by marketers for marketers, and it's got 20 years worth of expertise baked into it, right? It's got the highest performing marketing campaigns specifically fine tuned and trained in it versus ChatGPT, which has the world's knowledge and internet in it. So now what you can see here using our insights framework, which is something that, I really built an entire business on, being a marketer for 20 years.
Hey, can you zoom into that a bit? Only because it's just on my screen. It's quite small. And
Absolutely,
give the
Brian. Thank you
details.
for asking. Let me just compress the sidebar too so we have some more room. Can you see that now?
A little bit better. I'd say maybe 10 more percent will be golden.
Sure.
Perfect. That's good.
Okay, great. So now what you can see here is I just asked it to uncover insights, right? By pushing one button. And you can see it's coming up and it's basically generating a list of limitations for me on the Rentvine business, right? You can see it's literally grabbing the information off Rentvine's website automatically, real time. It's not making this stuff up. If I put in Rentvine into ChatGPT, and I did this before today, you get gobbledygook in terms of answers back. From there, then it creates challenging conventional wisdom, right? What does that look like? Comes back with some strategic one-liners automatically, right? Comes back with some category cliches, maybe some fresh shower thoughts, right? Some metaphors, right? So now we're doing the job of a creative director at a world-class agency, right? We happen to have trained our LLM and our fine-tuned model on myself and some of my best creative directors over the past 20 years who have worked with brands like Lady Gaga and some of the largest businesses in the world versus just asking ChatGPT to come up with an insight. You're going to get, a million different answers. It's going to give you some very specific creative campaign concepts, right? It's going to go from there. So now this is kind of an interesting thing, Rentvine Heroes. It's like I can now go back to Vulcan. I'm going to just zoom out for 1 second, but don't worry, I'll zoom in a second. And I can say, I really like the idea of Rentvine Heroes. Can you build me out an email sequence and a full campaign for this? So now I'm just going to ask the tool whatever I want to do. And what the tool is going to do now is it's going to go out and it's going to come back to me. It's going to say, okay, well, who are they? And I'm going to just say, you do the research and you figure it out for me. And I don't advocate being lazy here, but because I've got you folks all here live, you can see it. What the tool's now doing is it's going out, it's hitting the internet, it's hitting our LLMs, it's hitting multiple large language models, OpenAI, Anthropic, Bedrock, etc., putting all that stuff together, simplifying it, and doing it. Because let's be honest, folks, right? You've been asked probably by your bosses or by your board, wherever you sit in the organization, to do more with less. And you don't have time to be sitting there in ChatGPT for hours a day just bouncing back and forth. Even though, let's be honest, many of us are spending more time these days in these platforms than ever. So what this is going to do now, I'm going to zoom in to Ryan's ask, is it's going to go out and it's going to actually start to build out a campaign strategy for me. And it's going to give me an executive summary. It's going to give me some campaign objectives, right? Maybe that's a creative brief you need for to give to your agency if you've got someone doing the work for you. Maybe that's something you're handing to one of your team members to execute, right? And then you can see here, it's like it's mapping the audiences, it's building a campaign concept, it's writing the emails and giving you the content right here. And we can even generate the images, right? I mentioned to you a moment ago. I'll just pull up another screen. Let me know if you can see this, Brian, or not. But give me 1 second here, friends. So we mentioned a plugin called VibeGen, right? And you can see these images were created entirely with AI. Um, this is another one of the attendees today, Brian. This came right off their website. And then we clicked one button and this entire new infographic was generated. And you can see the quality of these icons is really great. And this entire thing was generated with AI. Now, obviously, having it say map, checklist, flowchart, I'd want to give it some parameters or some direction. But if I iterated back and forth, as you can see in this list here, all of these are created with AI. Here's a lifestyle image for, a fashion brand we were working with. This, you can see how good it is. The fingers are correct. The proportions are correct. This entire image right here, she's wearing a Nike shirt. This entire thing was created with AI for a fashion brand in this case. So here you can see just what's possible, and this is not this is not an advertisement for Vulcan. Again, if you want access to it early, let me know. But this is me saying these are the tools that you pay for right now. If you use them differently, you can get the things that you need. So I hope that answers some of the questions and gives you guys just an example of how you can use tools like this or the tools you already use to get what you need. And what's really great about this is you can just ask it whatever you want. Like this tool will generate landing pages. This tool will generate, copy for whatever you want. So I might say something like, I have a new salesperson that's starting. I need to brief that new salesperson on what our value prop is, what our value letter is, and what our messaging is. Can you help me generate a brand DNA based on what this is? Now, the reason why when I hit this enter button, it's going to be so good and high quality is because I built a world-class branding agency over the past 20 years. So I very specifically, we have a framework called Brand DNA on how we think about it. So what you're going to see in just a second is it's going to go for, in the case of Rentvine, it's got all that information. It's mapping a mission, a vision, brand promise based on what it sees on the publicly available internet. Now we can iterate on this, we can ideate on this if we wanted to expand that. But you see, it's giving us a brand positioning chart, right off the map. It's giving us an attributes map. It's giving us, who are we trying to talk to? A tech forward property manager, a demographic, a psychographic, a need, a communication state.
So
And if
Pete,
we're not happy with that,
real quick, the pace at which you're moving is amazing. You're actually moving at the speed of AI, I feel like. So most of the folks that are listening to this, I
Mhm.
would have to posture that they're not going to be able to move at this speed, nor do they have your 20 years of experience. So if we can just
Fair.
pull the camera back, zoom back, and say, for someone that maybe is catching 1/10 of what you're saying,
Mhm.
where do they start and how do they know if they don't know what to prompt, they don't know what to ask, they don't even know where to go? Let's say they get their hands on Vulcan early access and they say, I want to be a better marketer. I want to be a better client success manager. I want to be a better salesperson, or I just want to be a better junior marketer. Where
Mhm.
do you recommend they start? Where do you recommend they educate themselves? How do you bring this down to a practical level? Because even me at my pace, I'm listening to this going, I wouldn't know how to take this to tomorrow.
That's a great point, Brian. Thank you for asking that. What I would say, if I was talking to a new chef that wanted to become a Michelin star chef, and they said, well, how do I get taste? I would say you have to taste to taste. So to be really directly actionable to your question, what I would say is the first place to start is right where you're at right now. Whatever tool you use, whether it's ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, whatever tool you might have that your company pays for, that's got that little star icon that says generate or button, whether you're in Canva or Google Docs or whatever, HubSpot, whatever tool you're in, I would say start to look at where the AI buttons are, where the AI features are, and start just having curious conversations with AI. If you are looking to do this on nights and weekends, download ChatGPT or Grok on your iPhone or your Android phone and just start having conversations with it. Ask it for meal prep ideas like I do, or, take a photo and just start asking different questions. If you don't know where to start, I would say just start by exploring and playing. One of my favorite use cases of AI is just when I've got something that would take me more than 20 minutes to do, I'll just set a timer and say, hey, can I get this done in under 20 minutes using AI? Now, that's probably where I would suggest starting is, any type of artifact-based activity. I'm writing a document. I'm creating an image. Any activity that you or your teams are doing, I'm writing an email. These tools can be really beneficial for how you augment. So that's the place I would start. That'd be like, starting from the beginning. There's a lot of links that I'll include for folks that they can grab, where they can check out just like some how-tos. There's a lot of if you just go on and OpenAI's website. OpenAI has a university. I'll just show you OpenAI University. Give
And
me
while
one
you're
second
speaking
here.
to that, it's really good advice. I'd like to communicate to everybody listening, whether you're in a sales, marketing, operations, project management role, developer, it doesn't really matter what role you're in. You have to be able to map your job description and the responsibilities you have, because the standard at which you work at, and that's organization, company, entrepreneur, there has to be a standard that's set. Because Pete mentions taste and a Michelin star chef. There's a very big departure from having a McDonald's cheeseburger versus going to a fine dining establishment. Now, part of that is the quality of ingredients, what goes into it, the craftsmanship, the plating, all of these things. But when it comes to your role, if you could truly understand what you're responsible for doing and get out of the general and get more specific. For instance, if you were a sales development representative and your goal is to vet other companies before they go into a business development representative, if your goal is to identify and say, listen, is this a quality prospect for us? And your responsibility is to deliver that. There's a number of AI tools that you can do, but I would also ask some of the AI tools to help improve the work that you're already doing. Agentic AI and steps that are happening in AI, You want to be able to say, what am I doing as the human? And as the human, what can I do and streamline that workflow? Because if I can take certain steps that I have and a robot can do that faster, for instance, market intelligence, crafting emails, pulling inspiration from other things that exist, there is a number of literature that exists where one of the tactics that I like to do is when you go into ChatGPT and you want to say, hey, can you write me an email that serves these 3 or 4 purposes? Oh, go ahead.
I just want to show you. I was just about to answer what you were about to say, if it's okay.
Go ahead.
So
Yeah, yeah, of course.
to answer your question, Brian, so OpenAI Academy is 100% free. You can just Google OpenAI Academy or Perplexity or wherever you search. And there's some really great, how-tos. These are, hour plus long videos in some cases. This one's for nonprofits, this one's for policy landscape. But just to answer your question, Brian, with just to keep it really, really simple, I'll just pull over this window. I'm on chatgpt.com right here, and I'll just use the example that you were saying. I am an SDR. I've never used AI. What are the 3 most important things I can learn, and how can I use ChatGPT to make my job easier? Give me 3 bulleted ideas step by step. If I just hit enter now, the AI, and you can use this for free, by the way, they have a free tier as well. It's literally going to go out and it's going to give you some very, very specific examples, right? You can see it even wrote the prompt for me. Summarize this prospect's role and likely KPIs. Why might they care about, and then insert your product here. Ask ChatGPT to do this, right? So, like, quite literally, the best way to experience these AIs is just to use these AIs. Um, you know, I see someone in the audience just said, I assume it's possible to connect one AI to another for task automation. Is there a layperson friendly way to do it? Yeah, 100%. Great question. If you do not know anything about technology and you're looking for the easiest way to string together technologies, I would say Zapier is literally the easiest possible platform you can think about. They actually have a pretty generous trial tier, and they have a very awesome kind of AI feature where you can go to it and just like ChatGPT, let me just show you what it looks like. You can tell it what you want. Like, I want to connect. I want it so when someone, let me just show you an example. I can log in. I want it so when someone emails me and says the name Brian, I want that to get sent to my Slack that says someone mentioned Brian in your email. You can literally tell Zapier this and it'll automatically set up the integration. It'll walk you through how to do it. And Zapier, again, they have a free tier. And it's like 20 bucks a month, if you wanted, or 30 bucks a month if you wanted the monthly tier. So there are tools like this that connect these tools together. The other thing, folks, back to OpenAI for a second, is they're launching so many new features now. So if you're logged into OpenAI as I am here, and you come down, you'll notice that they've got all these tools built in. They also, if you click this plus button, you can actually connect it to all different apps too. So they're adding a lot of different things on there. So it's a great question in the audience. Thank you for asking that. All these things are possible if you just start asking the AI. So if you take nothing else away from today, it's first and foremost, you should never be doing anything in business ever again without leveraging AI as your sidekick. That's your biggest takeaway. The second biggest takeaway is if you want to figure out how to leverage your AI sidekick, just start talking to AI. Your company probably already pays for some kind of an AI tool. I mentioned the 3 more popular ones: ChatGPT, Google's Gemini, Anthropic's Claude. They all have pros and cons. They all fundamentally have some of the same core functionality. Some of them are nuanced at different things. But yeah, I know we're come up on time now. So what I would just say, folks, is thank you so much for your time and attention. Brian, thank you so much for having me here. I want to just, really quickly just say thank you to everybody. I think the future is humans and AI robots. I was inspired by the Sistine Chapel for this particular image I made here. It was also generated in AI, shocker. But I just want to say thanks, Brian. It was really fun being here today and having a conversation with your audience. And I'll stick around for a couple minutes if folks have additional questions or want to see kind of a live demo. But
Did
a
you want
lot
to,
to
do you want to
cover.
pop up VibeGen real quick, just to quickly show people what's possible with VibeGen?
Yeah, absolutely. So give me an example of something that you're trying to create, Brian.
I think one of the things that blew my mind was you took the images from digitalassetredemption.com, DAR, one of our clients, and you were able to look at that artwork and then rapidly create a number of prompts and then rapidly create 25 new pieces of artwork that normally would take our designers 2 to 3 hours minimum to do.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
think that
sure. So,
that to
well,
me was legitimately mind blowing. And while you're pulling that up, I just wanted to say one thing that I often use ChatGPT, and I think what it does really well is if you can take two different things and cocktail them together. For instance, if you wanted to write you an email, you prompt that email with the emotion you want your end user to feel, you want the information in it, and then if you pull an inspiration from a book that you've read, that you want to use the principles of that book, whether it's Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People or Chris Voss's Never Split the Difference. If you reference those two things and say, hey, ChatGPT, do me a favor, write me an email that hits these key points and do me a favor, rewrite it to pull inspiration from this book, you will be blown away at what comes back because they use the core principles. So instead of having to read a 300 to 400 page book and reprocess it and then work it in, let the robots help you because you're pulling inspiration from existing knowledge base. It's a game changer.
yeah, that's a really great use case for ChatGPT, Brian, for sure. I use ChatGPT as my therapist, right? You know, my previous therapist, I think she was like 350 an hour or something like that. And now I've basically replaced her for a $20 a month subscription. And basically what I did was, with her permission, I recorded the sessions I was having with her, and I basically took the transcript of that, popped it into a new project in ChatGPT, and I basically said, you know, unfortunately, I can't afford my therapist anymore. That's actually not true. I can, but I just don't want to spend 350 an hour to talk to a therapist. And I basically trained ChatGPT with a project to essentially replace my therapist, and it asks better questions. And I also feel less judged when talking to ChatGPT versus my therapist. So I'll use VibeGen, and so you can see it here. So this is the Resonance. It's one of the things we do for companies is AI upskilling. So this is just one of our landing pages that we've got here on the Resonance. I'll just take a screenshot of this, you know, really custom image, right? One of my lead creative directors, this was a 3D modeled image of the person. You can see the animation here. This took a lot of time to make. So I'm just going to take a screenshot of this really creative asset for anybody that might be in branding or design. I'll just copy it to my clipboard. I'll go over to Figma. Right now, a lot of our audience is designers at brands and companies. I'll just paste it here, and you can see the image. And then what I'll do is I'll just use VibeGen. I'll just come over here. I'll open up the VibeGen plugin. If you guys want to link to VibeGen, let me know. I can do it. So what I can do here is I basically can either upload an image, or I can pick one right from the canvas here. So I'll just literally show you guys here um, how VibeGen works. So I've clicked on this element on the canvas here, which is this image I brought in from, you know, from my website, but you can bring it in from anywhere you want. Maybe it's something that inspired you on Pinterest or whatever it is. And I can say here, you know what? I want this to be a vertical image, and same vibe, but make the person a man instead of a woman, and change the small photos to something about manufacturing. So now, right in front of your face, we can just hit generate. And VibeGen's going to get to work here. It's going to take this reference image. It's going to take the thing I asked it to do, and it's going to work its magic. And in just a moment, it's going to give me an example piece of content that you can see. And again, you can just see some of the stuff that I recently, you know, recently was generating logos and kind of funny different things here and photo styles and that sort of thing. So we'll give this just a second to generate. And yeah, that's VibeGen. So that's a tool we built. Now, folks, if you're using ChatGPT, you can ask ChatGPT to generate you an image inside the platform. If you're using Midjourney, you can ask it to generate images. If you're using Google Gemini, you can ask it to generate images. So what I'm showing you here is not some magic panacea that only I have access to. Every single one of you, for free or for small, inexpensive subscriptions, can have access to this. Now, as some of you might notice, back to the taste thing, the way you prompt it determines what you get back, right? Quality prompts. So just, you can see VibeGen now. I'll just go ahead and add this to the canvas, and I'll make it bigger. And you can see here, like, just looking at VibeGen, right? I asked it for manufacturing. It generated manufacturing image. It generated a super high quality look of this man here. And it even got every word, you know, target audience, core problem, and the button really nice, right? And so I can ask VibeGen to go and generate multiple.
Yeah, but now imagine you're a designer. Imagine what that would have taken. It would have taken a brief, leadership, It would have taken a designer to go away, get a cup of coffee, get their brain in action, find the right image, find the right complementary images, shade it, put the right overlay in it, customize the texture. And now that was what, 34 seconds? And
Yeah,
so
exactly.
my point would be, don't be scared. Okay. This is your chance to now innovate and become much more thoughtful with the work that you do, because you don't have to spend time pushing pixels and working in layers. You have to spend your time creating a really, really solid brand. Because the thing that I want to tell everyone from a commercial perspective is, well, how do you charge for this? If the agency model in the past was brains and bodies, time and materials, blended billable, et cetera, clients are going to say, well, that took you 10 seconds. Okay. Well, it's back to the analogy of, I didn't just come to fix the pipe in 30 seconds. It took 30 years of experience. The baseline brand, the emotions, and the trends you capture are the absolute most important thing. And it's also about selling on value. So if you could connect with your clients to say, by me creating these 25 things and putting together this plan, this is the value it's going to generate. That's how you start pricing some of this stuff, because you still have to have the baseline knowledge to be able to do this.
Yeah, I mean, I would answer that slightly different. I mean, that's a very valid answer for sure. As always, of course, you're brilliant. The what I would say for folks that might be listening to this that are agencies, I've been focused on value-based pricing for, for almost a decade. If you charge for your time, there's no incentive to work faster, right? And that for me, um, I just wanted to show something for the audience here. So I just basically said, hey, in this style, I just asked it to make me a website header, and you can see here, like quite literally, without the images, it just made me a website header, and I asked for no words. And you can see now, this is the original. This is the real one that was the hard work for my team. This is the AI generated one that I can put on the masthead, right? So now I can very easily come in here, and I can start adding in typography. I could throw a little rectangle. This is not a design course, right? But just like super quick, I can in 2 seconds, add typography on this, export, and I have a header. There was a question from the audience I want to make sure I get to, which was, do you see generative AI results scaling or improving? I think the short answer is yes. And just to be clear, the person was mentioning that the images don't scale for print and for physical print thing. What I would say to that person is, if you use tools like Topaz AI, they actually have some really great. I'll just show you because the person asked the question. I want to reward folks who are asking questions. So thank you so much for that. I'm going to pull up an example tool you can use that we use for print upscaling. So this is a product called Topaz Labs, topazlabs.com. We did not create this product. I am not endorsed to say this, but you can see here, while it goes back and forth, that's the low res image and that's the high res image, right? So what's really great about tools like this is that they do have, I'll just show you in real time. You can see the grainy image here when someone tried to upscale that. And then you can run through Topaz, and then Topaz is going to give you the high res image. So you can absolutely already take a raw image, you can enhance that raw image, and with AI, I think that you can notice here this is an image that had precise detail, but it wasn't ready to scale up for a print-based image. So we use tools like Topaz. We actually do use Topaz specifically for helping out-of-home campaigns when we need to scale something that was designed for digital first that needs to scale. Generative AI we use now for video as well. So one of the big things that we're using at one of my agencies that I own is we'll do initial campaign concepts, we'll ideate, everything will be done with AI. We'll lock that in. We'll then go do a real search. We'll then get likeness from the actual creator or the models we're using. So we get ability to use it. And in our contracts, we have clauses so that we can use AI generated content. And then we're able to basically do one photo shoot and we have all the photos we need for the rest of the year because we took enough upfront photos where we can then go and generate multiple things. So I hope that answers the question for the person in the audience that asked that.
Yeah, it's only going to get
I know
better.
we're over time, Brian. This was so much fun. Thank you again for having me, and thank you again for the audience for your time and attention. I really, really appreciate it. And if there's any questions I can answer, I'm just Pete Sena on all the platforms. It would be my pleasure. I spend a lot of time and energy in this world.
Yeah. Massive gratitude. Thank you. Your mind is a palace. There's a lot of treasure up there. So I appreciate it. And what we do coming out of this, guys, we share the slides, we share the recording, we then break this up into sound bites. It comes into snackable points, like we've done with the other 8 webinars. We will distribute some links. In this one specifically, Pete was kind enough to put together 6 key resource links that you'll see an early stage look to Vulcan, to VibeGen as well. The goal is explore into those, go to the resource links, but also the playbook connected to Vibe. If you're trying to create it and capture it, it's all open source. So you really can't miss it. You can't fail. And I think the one bit of advice I would give to anyone watching this is in times of uncertainty, in times of great change, people become very fearful. They become scared. Well, what's going to happen? Is my job going away? How do I excel? How do I grow? It comes down to your foundational principles. If you're a hungry individual who leans in, sets a high standard for yourself, you're going to be just fine because you're going to innovate and adapt. Forward is not always a straight line. You might have to sidestep left and right. But in this case, with generative AI getting so good so fast, and we're talking multi-billion-dollar valuations on some of these companies, you have to understand that they're not going anywhere. Okay. So when you adapt and when you move forward, as Pete said, just start asking questions and ask questions about like, hey, my role is this. What should I go back to my boss with and come back? And what questions should I ask? And you'll see what comes back. And then you have the ability to do whatever human being does. Judge, right? You want to judge the answers that come back. You have a risk-free way of judging these robots to do and walk away. So we'll package all this up. We'll send it. Thanks for the extra time. I know it's a lot of fast-paced marketing. Watch this again. I think if you watch it back, a lot more of this will stick. Super valuable. So Pete, thanks for everything. You're the man. Proud to have you as my brother. This was really good. And also, thank you. I didn't have to do much talking. So appreciate you.
My pleasure, everybody. Bye,
Have a
guys.
good one. See y'all.